So I have a problem with people who preach waiting until marriage. Well, most of them. And this is because most of them don't really practice what they preach. Let's just say that. Now, in case you don't know what waiting until marriage means, it basically means that you remain a virgin until you meet the right one and you get married, and then you have sex for the first time and you give away your virginity to them. And this is what a lot of people have made who preach waiting until marriage. But the problem that I have with most of those people is that they got married at like 18, and so they lost their virginity when they were like 18. Except a lot of people lose their virginity when they are 18, so it's really nothing special. Most people who have successfully waited until marriage got married before the age of like 25, which is an early age to get married. And because they got married early, they did not really have to wait for the right one. They just happened to meet the right one at a young age. And so the reason why you successfully waited until marriage is because you never really had to wait. But the people you are preaching to that they should wait until marriage and stuff, they are typically not as privileged as you. There are 27, 28, even 30 and 40-year-old virgins. I'm not talking about myself, but those are people who desperately want to lose their virginity. They are not waiting and saving themselves. They are desperately putting themselves out there and doing whatever they can, but they still cannot lose their virginity. Probably because, for example, everyone they showed interest in has brutally rejected them and nobody wants to have sex with them. And if you have been privileged enough to get married at like 20, you never experienced what it's like to get brutally rejected by every single person you show interest in. Yes, people are incels, those people who desperately try to lose their virginity but cannot. You could just brush them off as incels, but the reason why incels exist in the first place is because not everyone is as equally privileged. You see all those people say, me and my husband were 18 and we were both virgins at the altar. Yeah, no shit, a lot of people are virgins at 18. We waited all this time and we finally tied the knot at a super young age. And to me, it has the same energy as that one girl who cried because she didn't have sex in a whole week. And a lot of those people who got married at a young age, they also preach that the solution to not having the need to wait and remain a virgin for too long is to get married young.
It is indeed quite a big thing to ask of somebody, to expect a guy to go through 15 years feeling the intense desire for physical companionship with women, and in the midst of a sex-crazed culture, and yet to remain celibate the whole time. That's a big thing to ask of somebody, and most people aren't able to do that, aren't willing to do it. So they become sexually active years and years before marriage is even on the table. It's not just that they become sexually active before marriage; they become sexually active before marriage is even a possibility. And then we have all these problems that I mentioned before. So then what's the solution? Well, here's one. Get married earlier.
But the problem with getting married young, and this is what all those people fail to realize, is that it requires you to be privileged. You can't just say, oh, I'm gonna get married young, and expect to actually succeed in finding the right one and getting married. Finding the right one is not easy, and even if you succeed, they might brutally reject you, or they might break your heart or whatever. Most people can't afford getting married young. Now, to be fair, what a lot of those people are really talking about is people who are not interested in getting married young whatsoever. For example, they just want to test waters first and date around first, like in this example.
I say all the time, in today's day and age, you shouldn't be getting married until you're at least 35.
That was my
man.
next question
As a
for you.
man.
As a man, what age
What
should
about
you
women?
consider getting married?
So I have, this is my thing that I tell guys.
Yeah.
I think 35 years old, had slept with at least 50 women, 100K per year, you're in shape, and you got 6 months to 1 year of savings.
All right, done. I got to get married. I've done all that. That's easy.
However, I think you need to try to understand where this mindset comes from. I can tell you from my personal experience, for example, I used to have this mindset. I wanted to date a bunch of people without any serious intentions. However, here's the thing. It hasn't always been like this for me. You see, there was this girl in middle school that I thought she was the right one for me. But then she brutally rejected me, and every single person I then showed interest in also brutally rejected me. And so the reason why I then wanted to date a bunch without commitment was because I felt the need to prove to everyone that I am indeed attractive. And I kept failing at this, and so it became a vicious cycle. I became more desperate, and because of that I kept getting rejected. But despite still being single at 23, I have worked on myself so much that I am actually willing to right now settle down and start a family at the young age of 23. What I'm trying to say is, even if people find the right one will probably reject them and stuff, because those people are probably not as attractive as you are. I'm not talking about myself. I am attractive myself, but I, for example, have carried a lot of personal inner conflicts, and a lot of people also do, and those people need to work on that before they can attract anyone into their life. And usually it takes several years to work on that. And because of that, getting married young is not an option for those people, whether they want it or not. And the people who preach to get married young will oftentimes make this argument that 100 years ago getting married young was normal. Why isn't it normal now? Well, I will tell you why. The reason why women married men 100 years ago was so that they could have basically human rights, which they did not have before they got married. Which means that even if a woman was not attracted to a man, she still had to marry him, and she could not just brutally reject him or break his heart, or else she would not receive those human rights. But nowadays, this is no longer the case. Nowadays, women can reject a man they don't deem attractive, for example, and you can basically reject whoever you want. And so, getting married young is simply not an option for a lot of people nowadays. I can guarantee that the majority of those people who got married young in this day and age, they have no idea what it's like to be brutally rejected and brutally heartbroken, because they themselves were privileged enough to never have to experience that themselves. Yet, they are trying to preach waiting until marriage, remaining a virgin until you get married, and getting married young to an audience that isn't necessarily as privileged as them. And because of that, it oftentimes does not work. Now, I want to make something clear. I am by no means trying to preach having sex before marriage here or anything like that. I think staying a virgin until you find the right one can actually be a very good decision. But if you're gonna make that decision, you should listen to someone who has actually experienced the hardships of waiting until marriage. Preferably someone who had to wait until they were at least 30 and then they found the right one, got married, lost their virginity, and they can unironically say that it was the best decision they have ever made. Those are the people you should be listening to. Not people who got married at a super young age and therefore have no idea what it really feels like to wait and to abstain from sex, because they themselves barely had to abstain from sex. And if you are one of those people who got successfully married at a young age, then it's good for you, but you just have to realize that not everyone has as much luck and fortune as you. And so when you preach to other people to wait until marriage and get married young, realize that it's not as easy for the people you are preaching to as it was for you.